The Day Humanity Stopped Dreaming, a documentary about lost dreams and vanishing consciousness. Part 1, The Awakening. Close your eyes. Not now, but tonight. Tonight, when darkness falls and your body surrenders to sleep, something extraordinary will happen. Your brain will construct an alternate reality so convincing, so immersive, that for those fleeting hours, you won't question it. You'll fly. You'll fall. You'll speak to the dead. You'll live entire lifetimes in minutes. We call this dreaming. And for most of human history, we've taken it for granted. But what if, one morning, you woke up and realized you hadn't dreamed? Not a vague recollection. Not a forgotten fragment. Nothing. A complete absence. A void where your nightly theater once existed. You'd probably dismiss it. One night without dreams. It happens. But what if it continued? Night after night. Week after week. The dream's simply gone. This isn't hypothetical. This is happening. Across the world, in scattered pockets of population, people are reporting something doctors are calling Dream Cessation Syndrome. Individuals who, seemingly overnight, have stopped dreaming entirely. Not forgetting their dreams, that's different. We all forget dreams. This is the complete absence of the dreaming state itself. And the implications are more disturbing than you might imagine. Because dreams aren't just entertainment for your sleeping brain. They aren't random. They aren't meaningless. Dreams are the machinery through which your mind processes reality, consolidates memory, regulates emotion, and, according to some neuroscientists, maintains the very coherence of consciousness itself. When dreams disappear, something fundamental breaks. Let me tell you about Patient Zero. His name was Michael Chen. A 34-year-old software engineer from Seattle. Healthy. No history of sleep disorders. No psychiatric conditions. No head trauma. Normal in every measurable way. Until February 14, 2024. On that morning, Michael woke up and mentioned casually to his wife that he hadn't dreamed. She didn't think much of it. Neither did he. But the next night, again, nothing. The third night, nothing. By the end of the week, Michael was convinced something was wrong. He could sleep. That wasn't the problem. He'd fall asleep normally, remain asleep for 7-8 hours, and wake feeling physically rested. But the subjective experience of dreaming, that nightly narrative his mind had always produced, had simply vanished. His wife suggested he was just forgetting. Michael insisted it was different. He'd forgotten dreams before. This felt like waking from anesthesia. A complete blackout. As if those hours didn't exist. By week 3, Michael was desperate. He sought help from a sleep clinic. They hooked him up to an EEG, monitored his brain activity throughout the night. And what they found? Michael's brain was entering REM sleep. Rapid eye movement, the stage associated with vivid dreaming. His eyes were moving beneath his eyelids. His brain waves showed the characteristic patterns. His body was paralyzed, as it should be during REM. But when they woke him during REM sleep and asked what he was experiencing, Michael reported nothing. No imagery. No narrative. No sensation of being anywhere other than in bed. His brain was executing the mechanics of dreaming without producing any conscious dream experience. It was as if the projector was running, but the screen remained blank. Within 6 months, the clinic identified 12 more cases. same pattern. Same inexplicable absence. And the number kept growing. By the end of 2024, there were hundreds of documented cases worldwide. Today, thousands. Maybe more. Many don't report it because they don't realize how serious it is. They assume it's stress, aging, normal variation. It's not. Something is happening to human consciousness. Something unprecedented. And we're only beginning to understand what it means. This is the story of what happens when humanity stops dreaming. Part 2, The Architecture of Dreams. To understand what we're losing, we must first understand what dreams are. For centuries, humans believed dreams were messages. From gods. From the unconscious. From the future. Freud called them the royal road to the unconscious. Jung saw them as communications from the collective psyche. Ancient civilizations built entire religions around dream interpretation. But modern neuroscience tells a different, stranger story. Dreams are not messages. Dreams are maintenance. Your brain, during waking hours, is under siege. It processes approximately 11 million bits of sensory information every second. Sights, sounds, textures, temperatures, proprioception, balance, internal organ signals. It's an overwhelming flood of data. Most of that data is discarded immediately. Only a tiny fraction reaches conscious awareness. But even that tiny fraction, the experiences you actually remember, the emotions you feel, the thoughts you think, accumulates. Memory isn't like a hard drive. You can't just save a file and retrieve it later unchanged. Memory is reconstruction. Every time you remember something, your brain rebuilds that memory from scattered neural patterns distributed across multiple regions. And each reconstruction slightly alters it. This is where dreams come in. During REM sleep, your brain replays the day's experiences. Not literally, dreams aren't recordings. But the neural patterns that encode those experiences are reactivated, strengthened, integrated with existing memories. Connections are made. Patterns are found. Meaning is extracted. This process is called memory consolidation. And it happens almost exclusively during REM sleep. But dreams do something else. Something even more critical. They regulate emotion. The amygdala, your brain's emotional center, is hyperactive during REM sleep. But crucially, the neurochemical norepinephrine, which is associated with stress and anxiety, is almost completely absent during dreaming. What this means is that during dreams, you can revisit emotionally charged experiences in a neurochemically safe environment. You can process trauma, integrate difficult emotions, find resolution to unresolved conflicts. Without this nightly emotional regulation, psychological wounds don't heal. They fester. Studies on sleep-deprived individuals show that after just one night without REM sleep, emotional reactivity increases by 40%. After 3 nights, mood regulation collapses. Anxiety spikes. Irritability becomes uncontrollable. Now imagine never dreaming again. Ever. The patients with Dream Cessation Syndrome began showing symptoms within weeks. Michael Chen, our patient 0, reported feeling emotionally flat. Not depressed, exactly. But disconnected. As if his emotions were happening to someone else. He could observe them, but not feel them fully. His memory started failing. Not catastrophically. Not like dementia. But he'd forget conversations from the previous day, lose track of details, struggle to learn new information. His sense of reality became unstable. He described it as living in a perpetual present. The past felt vague, unreal, like something that happened to someone else. The future was incomprehensible. He couldn't imagine it, couldn't plan for it. Other patients reported similar symptoms. A woman in Tokyo said she felt like she was disappearing. A man in London described it as watching life through glass. But the most disturbing reports came from those who had been dreamless for more than 6 months. They began questioning whether they were conscious at all. One patient wrote in her journal, "How do I know I'm awake? When I slept, I dreamed, and when I woke, I knew the difference. Now there's no contrast, no reference point. Am I awake right now? Or is this just another kind of nothing?" This is the existential horror of dreamlessness. Without the nightly experience of an alternate reality, the boundary between consciousness and unconsciousness dissolves. You lose the ability to know that you know. Part 3: The Collapse. As the number of cases grew, researchers scrambled to find a cause. They looked for viruses, toxins, environmental factors, genetic markers, anything that could explain why seemingly random individuals across the globe were simultaneously losing the ability to dream. They found nothing. No shared geography, no common exposure, no genetic link. Some patients were young, some old, some healthy, some with pre-existing conditions. The only commonality was the symptom itself, the sudden, complete cessation of subjective dream experience. But then a pattern emerged. A disturbing one. Nearly all patients reported high levels of screen time in the months leading up to dream cessation. Not just high, extreme. 8, 10, 12 hours a day staring at smartphones, computers, tablets, televisions. At first, researchers dismissed this as correlation. After all, most of the modern world spends significant time on screens. It would be unusual to find someone who didn't. But the patients weren't just heavy users. They were constant users. They reported checking their phones every few minutes, scrolling through social media for hours, watching videos on autoplay until 3, 4 in the morning. And many of them, over 70%, reported that they had stopped reading books entirely. This caught the attention of Dr. Elena Vasquez, a neuroscientist at MIT who specializes in imagination and mental imagery. Dr. Vasquez proposed a radical hypothesis: dreams require imaginative capacity, the ability to generate internal imagery, to construct narrative, to simulate experience. And that capacity, she argued, is atrophying. Think about it. When you read a book, your brain must create the images. You must imagine the characters, the settings, the action. Your mind generates the world. But when you watch a screen, the images are provided. Your brain becomes passive. A receiver, not a creator. Social media is even worse. Endless, fragmented stimuli. No coherence. No narrative. Just a constant stream of disconnected images and text, each demanding attention for seconds before being replaced. This, Dr. Vasquez suggested, is training the brain not to generate internal experience. It's teaching consciousness to be receptive rather than generative. And if your brain loses the ability to generate internal experience during waking hours, it may lose the ability to generate it during sleep as well. Dreams, after all, are the ultimate act of imagination. They are your brain constructing an entire reality from nothing. If that capacity atrophies, dreams disappear. The hypothesis was controversial. Many dismissed it as technophobic alarmism. But Dr. Vasquez designed an experiment. She recruited a group of volunteers who still dreamed normally. She asked half of them to continue their normal routines. The other half, she subjected to a strict digital protocol, 12 hours of screen time per day. Social media. Streaming video. No books. No creative hobbies. Pure consumption. After 6 weeks, the participants were brought back to the lab for sleep studies. The control group, those who maintained normal screen habits, showed no change in REM sleep or dream recall. But the experimental group showed a significant reduction. Not complete cessation, 6 weeks wasn't enough for that, but a measurable decline in dream vividness, complexity, and recall. Their brains were still entering REM sleep. But the subjective experience of dreaming was weakening. Dr. Vasquez's conclusion was grim: we are training ourselves not to dream. And once the capacity is lost, it may not be recoverable. But here's where the story takes an even darker turn. Some patients weren't just losing dreams. They were losing something else. They were losing the ability to distinguish between memory and imagination. A man in Berlin reported that he could no longer tell if an event had actually happened or if he had imagined it. He'd have conversations with people and later wonder if the conversation was real. A woman in Sydney began confabulating, creating false memories to fill gaps. She believed these memories were real. She'd argue with family members about events that never occurred. Another patient described it as reality blurring. The line between what had happened and what might have happened dissolved. This makes neurological sense. Memory and imagination use the same neural networks. When you remember, you reconstruct an experience. When you imagine, you construct a possible experience. The mechanics are nearly identical. Dreams sit at the intersection. They are constructed experiences that feel real. Without dreams, the brain loses its nightly practice at distinguishing construction from reality. And that's when consciousness itself begins to unravel. Part 4, The Void. Michael Chen stopped dreaming in February 2024. By October, he had quit his job. Not because he couldn't perform the technical tasks, his motor skills and procedural memory remained intact. But because he could no longer understand why he was doing them. Purpose, he said, required a sense of future. And the future had become incomprehensible to him. He described his existence as perpetual drift. Each moment arrived, existed, and vanished, but they didn't connect into a meaningful sequence. Life felt like watching a film with all the transitions removed. Just disconnected scenes. His wife tried to help. She'd plan activities. Try to engage him. But Michael reported feeling like an observer in his own life. He could see himself going through the motions, but he couldn't access the internal experience that would make those motions feel like his. In November, Michael voluntarily admitted himself to a psychiatric facility. Not because he was suicidal, but because he wasn't sure he was alive. The clinicians struggled to diagnose him. His symptoms didn't fit any established psychiatric category. He wasn't depressed, he could still feel pleasure. He wasn't psychotic, he had no delusions or hallucinations. He wasn't dissociated in the classical sense. He was simply absent. One of the attending psychiatrists described it as consciousness without continuity. Michael existed moment to moment, but those moments didn't form a coherent self. And he wasn't alone. Across the world, dream cessation patients were experiencing similar collapses. Some withdrew entirely, barely speaking, moving through life like automatons. Others became erratic, unable to regulate behavior because they had lost the emotional processing that dreams provide. A few patients reported something even stranger: they no longer felt ownership of their thoughts. They'd have an idea, but it wouldn't feel like their idea. It felt like it had appeared in their mind from somewhere else. They could observe their own thought process, but not identify with it. This is depersonalization taken to its extreme. The self, fragmenting into observer and observed, with no unifying experience to hold them together. Dreams, it turns out, may be the glue that maintains the illusion of a unified self. Every night, your brain constructs a narrative starring you. You are the protagonist of your dreams. You have goals, emotions, reactions. You exist as a coherent agent in a simulated world. This nightly rehearsal of selfhood may be what allows you to wake up each morning feeling like the same person who went to sleep. Without it, the self dissolves. By early 2025, researchers were calling this consciousness fragmentation disorder. The term Dream Cessation Syndrome no longer captured the severity of what was happening. This wasn't just about losing dreams. This was about losing the fundamental architecture of human consciousness. And then came the truly terrifying discovery. A team of neurologists in Switzerland performed MRI scans on long-term dreamless patients. They expected to find abnormalities in the regions associated with REM sleep, the pons, the thalamus, perhaps the visual cortex. What they found instead was atrophy in the default mode network. The default mode network is a collection of brain regions that activate when you're not focused on the external world. When you daydream. When you remember. When you imagine. When you think about yourself. It's the neural substrate of internal experience. And in dreamless patients, it was shrinking. Not dramatically. Not catastrophically. But measurably. Consistently. Their brains were physically losing the capacity for internal experience. The implications are staggering. If this continues, if the number of affected individuals keeps growing, we may be witnessing the beginning of a fundamental transformation of human consciousness. A transformation toward a purely external, reactive mode of existence. A humanity that no longer dreams. No longer imagines. No longer constructs internal realities. A humanity that simply receives. Part 5, the question. So what do we do? The obvious answer is to reduce screen time. To rebuild imaginative capacity. To relearn how to generate internal experience. Dr. Vasquez's research team has been working with early-stage patients, those who have only recently stopped dreaming. They've put them on a strict protocol: no screens except for essential work. Daily reading of fiction. Creative writing exercises. Meditation. Visualization practices. The results are mixed. Some patients report a gradual return of dreams. Faint at first. Fragments. But something. Others show no improvement. The capacity, once lost, remains lost. And for patients like Michael Chen, who have been dreamless for over a year, the prognosis is bleak. But here's the uncomfortable truth: even if we could cure dream cessation syndrome tomorrow, the underlying problem would remain. We are a species that has spent the last 2 decades systematically outsourcing imagination to machines. We used to tell stories around fires. We used to read books and construct entire worlds in our minds. We used to have long, uninterrupted periods of boredom during which our minds would wander and create. Now we have infinite content. Infinite stimulation. The algorithm knows what we want before we do. We never have to imagine because everything is provided. And our brains are adapting. Evolution doesn't care about dreams. It cares about survival. And in the modern world, the ability to process vast amounts of external information quickly is more valuable than the ability to generate rich internal experience. We are becoming optimized for consumption. And dreams, imagination, internal narrative, these are becoming evolutionary dead ends. Some researchers argue this isn't a crisis. It's just change. Human consciousness has always been fluid. It has always adapted to new technologies. Writing changed us. Printing changed us. The internet is changing us. Maybe losing dreams is just the next step. Maybe the future human won't need dreams. Won't need imagination. Won't need a coherent internal narrative. Maybe the future human will be perfectly adapted to a world of constant external stimulation, living entirely in the present, experiencing each moment as it arrives without the burden of continuity. But that raises a question that keeps me awake at night. If consciousness exists only in response to external stimuli, if there's no internal experience, no imagination, no dreams, is that still consciousness? Or is it something else? Michael Chen asked this question to his doctors. He said, "If I can't dream, if I can't imagine, if I can't feel like there's a continuous me experiencing my life, am I still human?" The doctors couldn't answer. Because the truth is, we don't know what makes us human. We don't fully understand consciousness. We don't know which parts are essential and which parts are just evolutionary baggage. But here's what we do know: for as long as humans have existed, we have dreamed. Dreams appear in every culture, every mythology, every religion. They are as universal to the human experience as language. To lose them is to lose something ancient, something foundational. And we may not fully understand what that loss means until it's too late. So tonight, when you close your eyes, pay attention. Notice the moment when your mind begins to drift. When the boundaries of reality soften. When the internal theater lights up. Because that moment, that transition from waking to dreaming, is the moment when your brain asserts its freedom from the external world. It's the moment when consciousness declares, "I am not just a receiver. I am a creator." And if that moment stops coming, if dreams fade into permanent silence, we may discover that we've lost more than sleep entertainment. We may discover that we've lost ourselves. The day humanity stopped dreaming may be remembered as the day we began to disappear. And the terrifying part? We might not even notice. Time fade. But curiosity remains. If this story moved you, subscribe, and stay with us in the silence between seconds.